now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! 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 ho, ho! Merry Christmas! Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! The Jeff Meacham Network's Multiverse of Media. For over 15 years, the recognized symbol of excellence and the standard bearer in coverage of sports and entertainment.
What is up, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to the DADS, not always on wrestling, here on both the Castilian Studios and the Jeff Meacham Network channels. I am, of course, the humble sidekick today, the West Coast Professor Jeff Meacham, and taking the lead as only he can, especially on a show like this, is our boy, the Renegade JJ Williams. JJ, before we get too deep into the meat and taters, if you will, of the show, just wanted to say thank you again for chiming in on Friday. I know that even though Donald is your boy, you even recognize where the heart and soul of the franchise is. So thank you for chiming along with me on the Mickey presentation, because, man, I love me that mouse.
At the end of the day, Walt said it best. It all started with a mouse.
Yes, that was the second day.
I always loved to mess with Mikey, Uncle Goofy, Stat Boy. You know, the mouse that started it all. And he's like, that's not how the quote goes. Like, I know that. Gotta make it my own, as they used to say on American Idol. Gotta take
That's
it,
right.
make it your own.
That's right.
You know, Mickey Mouse, the mouse that started it all.
That's right. It's
But yeah, I mean, it all started with the mouse. Technically, it all started with Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
yes.
If we really want to get technical, but you know, WWE is not the only one that does revisionist history.
That's right.
You know, like that fateful day in August of 2004 when Randy Orton approached the ring in those god-awful peach tights, found the World Heavyweight Championship laying in the floor, picked it up, climbed the turnbuckle, and began posing with it.
Took that poor belt 5 months to float there from Madison Square Garden. That belt's a trooper, darn it. Anyway, we're bad people. Anyway,
Gotta get a wrestling reference on the non-wrestling show.
That's right.
You know?
But again, I do thank everybody for putting up with my bullshit Friday, because Lord knows I love that mouse. I work for the mouse now, so I love me more. So I appreciate all of that, and I've been looking forward to this, and for reasons that probably nobody would really expect, because this is so 100% not my jam. Yeah. I don't go out of my way to purchase, even back when they were able to go purchase these things in a store that was a hard copy about this big, go out and purchase music on the regular. So it was never really my thing. And the fact that this topic was brought up, and it's like, there's that many of them? And yeah, there is. Like, okay, I know the songs enough where I can definitely chime in and make it a proper dad's presentation. And it's a very important one that we need to talk about, because there's so much, even now at the end of 2022, there's still so much crap and gaga in the world. Even me getting to have a fresh perspective of being inside the magic. Outside of that bubble, the world's kind of a screwy place. And to have compilations like this by such talented people on the regular, I feel they definitely need to have their showcase, their time in the sun, even if it is our little corner of the world here on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it amazingly right there. It's like you don't really realize how many of these that there are until you do your due diligence and really start searching.
Yep.
I mean, I knew all these songs, obviously.
Right, of course.
Some of them I didn't realize were released as charity singles until I did my due diligence and my research.
Right.
But, and I can only really say that for two of them. And they're in the bottom half of the list for that very reason.
Well, there you go.
But the rest of them, it's like, man, you just think about in my lifetime alone, because we all know I'm older than you. All of the travesties that have occurred in not just the US, but the world.
Yeah. Yep.
And so for people, whether it's a solo artist, a duet, a quartet, a sextet, or even more, to come together to put their names to a good cause.
Yep.
That's a special moment in time.
It is.
Especially when you look at some of the people that came together, and we'll get deep into that when we get to those numbers. But I mean, it's something that really hit me because, here we are, Thanksgiving, Christmas around the corner.
Yep.
So I felt like we needed to step the game up just a little bit and try to give the credit due to all of these artists who came together for these greater causes, for the greater good, if you will.
Well, when you figure that this week for you, you've got, it's a continuation of your Sandra Bullock month, which has been awesome. You've got your first review of the Santa Claus series, like you said, on Thanksgiving. So you've got Christmas and Thanksgiving literally colliding there on the same day, at least here on the Casa for you. Both of those holidays are so much about family and about giving back. And in the case of what we're talking about, the overall global awareness of the stuff that goes on that you might not necessarily want to see on the news on the daily, or might not want to read about in, at least for our age folk, the newspaper every day. But it definitely is something that affects all of us, whether we like to acknowledge or admit it or not.
Yeah. And, going back to Thanksgiving and Christmas colliding on the channel, we all know what happens when two holidays collide, right, Jack?
Yes, you get a wonderful attraction edition at the happiest place on earth, which is just the best thing. And by the way, I had to throw it out there because I haven't done it yet this year. I just realized that. The boy and I got to see it before his mom did this year.
Awesome.
Anyway, carry on.
All right, so reeling it back in, we're definitely going to try not to make this so depressing because, at its core, all these songs came apart because of some tragedy.
Right.
Some form of negativity. So we're going to try not to be overly depressing on this show.
Right.
If that type of thing triggers you, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I don't want to trigger anybody. I don't want to take anything like that lightly, but
especially this close to the holiday. We're right in the heart of the holidays, so it's.
So I totally get it. Yeah. But if you're going to stick around and ride with us and take a look at these songs and listen to us discuss these songs and these artists and these causes, buckle up because I think this is going to be a fun one.
Hands, arms, and vehicle all times, kids.
That's right. So starting off at number 10 is a song that came into being because of the Gulf War back in the early 90s. Artists on the track include, but are not limited to, I didn't list every artist here because they will be here forever. But just a few of the artists on this track are Randy Travis.
Oh, man, there you go.
Garth Brooks. Celine Dion.
Ooh.
Peter Cetera, who co-wrote the track.
Oh, wow.
Bobby Brown, along with his new addition mate Ralph Tresvant.
Nice.
And Will Smith.
Yes.
And we're discussing Voices That Care.
So good.
You know, this was one of two songs that came out around the time of the Gulf War, and the other one will come definitely higher on the list for reasons. This one, it was a good track, but it didn't hit and resonate with me the way the other one did, which is the only reason why it comes in as low as it does. You know, this was one of the first major tragedies that I recall in my life. I mean, yeah, there had been the Challenger disaster, there had been Tiananmen Square, and those type of things. But this was the first real war of my generation, was the Gulf War. And seeing all of these people that banded together and united to try to raise money, to try to raise support for the soldiers that were going over to fight that fight. That was a big deal back then. You got to figure this was right in the middle of the MTV era. So you had that star power coming together even more so than some of the songs that came before it, which, while ranked higher because of their causes and their star power, this was nothing to be sneezed at.
Absolutely not. And when you tying it back to what we do on my channel primarily, the Gulf War was going on during my original fandom year. I figure, I started watching October 1990. That was when Sergeant Slaughter was really coming in his own as the Iraqi sympathizer. So it was very much a part of my life on the regular, not even watching the news every day.
Yeah.
Our WWF imitates life. It always has. So this is definitely worth inclusion. You said you had the other Gulf War compilation that we'll get to later. That's probably the first major news story that happened in my life as far as on this level that I have vivid memory of over a continued period of time.
Yeah.
I mentioned the Challenger. I remember that day as far as sitting there watching the launch, because we always watch the launches on television as when I was a little boy, and my mom's reaction and my lack of understanding of the reaction. Right?
Well, yeah, because you only would have been like 3 years old.
I was 3 years old when the Challenger exploded. So that was...
Yeah. And, granted, John Denver did do a song about the Challenger called Flying for Me.
Oh, my God,
because he was in the running to be the first civilian on a ship. But it wasn't a charity single.
So it's funny you mentioned John. God, it's amazing how synergy works, even when we're not even really planning for it.
Trust me, if that had been released as a charity single, that would be on my list.
Well, right. But I got revealed the other day to me by a very important person in both our lives. She messaged me that Big Bird was also in the running to be on the Challenger. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine the kids' reaction around this country if Big Bird had been on that thing? Oh my God.
Dude, Big Bird had already had to deal with the death of Mr. Hooper a couple years prior.
Right?
Which was the first time kids really had to deal with something on that level. Man. And, you figure the entire Sesame Street cast was like, what do we do here? How do we work around this? Do we not mention it? It's like, right? No. Let's address it and treat the kids like they're human beings. Let's make this make sense to them. So the way they handled it with Big Bird was perfect.
Yeah.
But I don't know what would have happened if Big Bird had been on that ship.
Yeah.
If
If you
Carol
had
Spinney in that costume had been on that ship.
Yeah. And even if Carol's not in the costume, but it's just somebody, but how do you retcon watching Big Bird board that thing and then like that there's no going back from that.
Yeah, no.
So, God, I mean, John would have been bad enough, and John met a horrible ending. That was terrible too. But man,
ironically in a plane crash. So yeah.
Right. But Big Bird, granted, I was never a Sesame Street guy. I know you were. I know a lot of our viewers were as kids. But man, even then, man, that would have been just the worst. But getting back to this, the charity single, the Gulf War, and again, you're a few years ahead of me, like you mentioned. But even still, you were in your teens at that point during the Gulf War, early teens, maybe.
Yeah.
The Gulf War was
I would have turned 14 in August of 90.
Okay. The Gulf War was it was everywhere. It was everywhere we went. It was on every news channel. It was on every broadcast channel. Like, you're watching your regular shows in prime time. No, we're breaking in for this. Like, it was everywhere. It was such a part of our daily lives that, and people will talk about, oh, there's too much news coverage of, the Iraq War, the war in Afghanistan. It's like, man, it's always been that way. War is a profitable business, even for the media covering it. I hate it. I think it stinks, but that is the reality of things. And the fact that something like this comes together where you have people trying to generate not only funds to help the soldiers, but awareness of what they're dealing with. Not just the soldiers, but the Kuwaiti people. Such a great thing to make people aware of, hey, yeah, we're over there dealing with this, and maybe we don't belong over there, but that's not the boys' choice. They're part of this. They have to go over there to do their job. The Kuwaiti people sure as hell have a decision in this.
Yeah.
Let's help them and bring awareness to what's going on. Great cause, great start to the list.
Thank you. Coming in at number 9 on the list is a song that was released for AIDS research and prevention. Okay, and I want to keep something in perspective here as I go further into this song.
Yes.
Okay, the song was released in 1985. So AIDS research and prevention. This is before Freddie Mercury, before Magic Johnson, before Eazy-E.
Yep.
Before AIDS was really a prominent fixture in everyone's mind. We're already trying to raise money for research and prevention.
Because it was so scary in 85, people were, pardon my French already, but people were already, what the fucking about this disease?
Yeah. And it comes to us from Dionne Warwick, Gladys Knight, Elton John, and Stevie Wonder. This is one of the ones that I didn't realize was a charity single at first.
Right.
Until I did my dig deeping. I did not realize that That's What Friends Are For was a charity song.
Wow.
I just figured this was a group of friends that came together and collaborated because it's billed as Dionne and Friends.
And hell, what a group to come together.
Yeah, seriously, I mean, let's lighten the mood here by saying one of these things aren't quite like the other.
But you know what? Hey.
But I mean, at the end of the day, you can't argue with the star power of any of them.
No.
As a quartet in 1985, you can't get a whole lot better without calling them John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. Right. And John Lennon was dead for 5 years at this point.
Yeah. John was gone. So yeah, not so much. Yeah. The only group I can think of that would have been probably better than that would have been Marty McFly and the Starlighters. But I can't talk about that because I done messed that part up on our show. So, twice on, well, no, because the second one wasn't about that scene. It was about the movie in general. To be fair to me. If we're going to throw that argument at me, I messed up the scene, the music part once. But anyway, I digress. This, again, like I said, AIDS was such a mystery. in the early 80s. People didn't know what caused it. People didn't know why it was all of a sudden such this rampant thing.
One more thing to throw in, it was before Philadelphia, which really helped bring awareness to AIDS and everything.
Yeah, you talk about awareness.
You figure this song was before, like I said, Freddie Mercury, Magic Johnson, who's still alive today.
Yes.
Eric Eazy-E Wright, and the movie Philadelphia.
Yes.
4 things, if you want to call them the 4 horsemen, the Fantastic Four, 4 things that really helped to bring awareness to HIV and AIDS in the forefront.
Yep. I'll never forget. I want to say, and forgive me if I'm wrong, those of you at Playboy Enterprises, I think it was one of the 2 issues that Sable was on the cover of, because it was toward the end of the millennium, toward the end of the decade, the century, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget, they were talking about like magazine ads or print ads of that period during Playboy's run, and there was an ad with it was printed overseas. They wouldn't have flown here in America, obviously. Right. Of a woman facing the mirror. You couldn't see the actual parts. You can't print in media, but she was naked in front of a mirror, going, "This is what AIDS looks like." And she's just looking in the mirror, completely agape at everything. Beautiful, statuesque woman. You don't think anything's wrong because there's not anything wrong. This is the picture of AIDS, and it's like that's how scary it was because you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it generated so much controversy because it automatically became, it's the gay disease. It's like, no, it does not affect just those folks.
That's exactly what it was labeled as for the longest time. Yep. Only homosexuals would get HIV.
It's such a
because of butt stuff.
Oh, it's such a stereotypical, narrow, just god awful thing.
It is, because how do you explain Magic Johnson?
Yeah, straight as an arrow.
How do you explain Eazy-E?
Yeah.
You can explain it that way with Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
But how do you explain Eazy-E?
Yep.
Who, if you watch Straight Outta Compton, freaking screwed just about anything female that moved.
Right.
So explain that one to me, how it's the gay disease.
And what's so bad is once people started labeling it that, they went back and at Liberace death. Oh, well, he had... Like, no, he did not. It was, you talk about paranoia, you talk about cancel culture, man, the homosexual community was so attacked, so violently and aggressively because of the onset and the overwhelming movement and spreading of AIDS. It was just, you look, I mean, granted, I was literally a baby when this one was released. I was 2 years old. Yeah. And maybe not even that. What month is it? Do you know?
I didn't take note of that one. Give me a second. Yeah, it just says 1985.
Okay, so anything before March 1st, I was not even 2 yet. So even still.
I take that back. October 85.
Okay, so the same time Back to the Future takes place, which we were talking about earlier. So, it all ties together, kids.
Synergy.
The world was not as cynical as it is now. Not gonna lie. But toward that community, absolutely. And it's disgusting. And it's stuff like this that makes people go, maybe there is some hope for the world.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're trying to keep it upbeat, but I mean, the reality is this album came together because of something that had hit so hard, so fast, and scared so many people in so many different ways. A lot of it in a completely disgusting and unnecessary way.
So number 8 comes to us for Live Aid relief.
Oh, man. I remember this one.
and of course, Live Aid kind of spawned out of Band-Aid.
Yes.
So when we get, that'll be coming down the road. Band-Aid kind of opened the doors for quite a few of these that came after. Not the original. We'll get there down the road too, but Band-Aid opened the doors for Farm Aid and Live Aid and all those things.
Yes.
So in order to help the Live Aid charities, Dancing in the Street, David Bowie and Mick Jagger.
Right on.
And this is another one that I didn't realize was a charity single at first.
I didn't either until actually right now you just told me. So there you go.
But again, you've got two iconic names.
Yes.
You know, Jagger from the 60s and 70s, Bowie from the 70s into the 80s. And they came together for this cover, the classic song. And it's so hokey and so cheesy.
And the
But
video's even worse.
But it's so fun and
Yes.
so lighthearted. And when you've got stuff like this that you're trying to raise money for, it's good to have that lightheartedness.
Yes.
And that's why I never had a problem with how cheesy the video was.
Oh.
So many people rip on this video, but you've also got to remember they literally had 24 hours to record the song and make a music video. Because both of them had other shit they had to get back to.
Yep.
And the fact that in that 24 hours, we got what's heard on wax, on CD, on cassette tape, and what we see in that music video just shows what professionals they were.
I'm sorry. I've seen the video in my head just like, oh my God. It's
But
so cheesy.
like
I want to go grab some wine out of the kitchen just to have some to go with it. Good
Right,
grief.
but like I said, that's why I can't crap on it, because
Oh,
they
no.
literally, if they had had a week or a couple
Oh,
of
yeah.
days like most videos, it wouldn't have been that bad. They had 24 hours. And they literally, I think they only filmed that video over the course of 8 hours because the other 16 were on the actual recording of the song.
That just shows
That's why the
how,
entire video takes place at night. You figure they had from sundown to sunup, however long it was over the course of that one day to crank that out.
yeah. It just
Think
shows
about it.
how great David was, Mick is, even now. Mick's older than the sands of time and, just as crazy. But it shows how great they are and how professional both guys were over their careers, and just that if the mood is there, if the theme is there, if the cause is there, two pros can knock just about anything out. And
Absolutely.
both those guys are just a grade above talent.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Numbers.
Just think about Bowie. I always think about Bowie and Alan Rickman and freaking Lemmy within like a week. It's like,
Yeah.
cancer all on its ass. Anyway, carry on.
Number 7. Number 7 is number 7.
Okay,
And,
there you
well, I don't really know how to intro it. I mean, all the money went to charities that were set up in this person's name and that they heavily supported. It was a tragic death. It's Candle in the Wind 97.
Oh,
Exactly.
man.
That's why it's like, how do you set this up and try to
Yeah.
give it great build
Yeah.
when she died trying to escape paparazzi because they wouldn't leave her alone? And we still haven't learned from these mistakes.
No. Nope.
Granted, I don't think it's as bad as it was then, but it's still pretty bad.
I don't know, brother. When you got Tom Hanks, the king of nice, shoving a paparazzi damn near on his butt for being up in his wife's face, ain't nothing got better. That was not. You figure that's 25 years ago that Diana and everybody passed in that car crash.
I know.
But again, that's not what the charity single was about. It's not what it was. It was Elton realizing that
it was Elton doing a song for his friend at the end of the day.
It was. It
Because
really
he was close to Diana.
Yep. And he knew, because Elton John is Elton effing John, that not just he was suffering, not just Diana's boys were suffering, not just a country that had elevated the royal family up to another level was suffering. The world
was
mourned
suffering.
this woman. Still mourns this woman to this day.
because the world tuned in and watched her marry Prince Charles.
She was the world's princess. As
The
much as
people's
we,
princess.
yeah, as much as we fought with our treasonous damn bastard selves to get away from that country, we still revere them. Shoot, the queen just passed and we're still all kind of like verklempt about it, you know, and she was 90-something years old. It's like, she was old, she kind of died, you know, whatever. But we still hold those people in high regard because they were a standard above the rest. And Diana was above all of them because when you look back, dude, neither her nor Charles ever wanted to be in the position they were in as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
He loved Camilla from the beginning. Neither one of them loved the other in a we're going to be husband and wife, king and queen way. And Charles has kind of been thrown under the bus, and I really think it's unfair in a lot of ways over the years. But both of them had to kowtow to just old school, antiquated, royal bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And them finally splitting in the public way that it was, and Diana just trying to be Diana and just not be the Princess of Wales, just be Diana who has her children, who is, you know, involved in the relationship with this other person. It just was so tragic the way it all went down and the way it finally came to an end.
Yeah.
And like you said, Elton wrote this for his friend, you know. Yeah. It's and when you think about the original version where it's basically a story, you know, the song is about Norma Jean Baker, Marilyn Monroe, and how her end was just ungodly, tragic, and stupid.
It was the perfect song to adapt for this, and it was the first time him and Bernie had worked together in years. Let's not gloss over that. Elton and Bernie had broken up their relationship, dissolved their relationship as co-writing team.
Yep.
You know, probably second greatest songwriting team next to Lennon McCartney. Yeah. Again. But they were able to come back together because Elton's like, look, you wrote these lyrics originally. I need you to, you know, here's an idea of what I'm trying to get across here. I need your lyrics.
Yeah.
And they were able to mend that fence and come back together.
Yeah. We need to suck this up and rise above our own crap.
Yeah. Because there, like you said, there's a country and a world that is hurting.
Yep.
This is more important than our petty bullshit.
Yeah. I'll never forget when Disney Plus was launched and they were talking about the Imagineering story. Talking about Diana taking the boys to Disney World just because that's what families do.
Yeah.
She just wanted normalcy, man.
Yeah, that's all any celebrity really wants. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of celebrities that love the fame and the fortune and the glamour and the glitz and the spotlight. But at the end of the day, every one of them will tell you that they wish they could have a day, a week, a month, a year where they could go with not getting recognized and just have an existence again.
And to her credit and to her chaperone's credit and to the company's credit, Disney World gave her and the boys that. And I can't even... That must have been such a relief. As young as the boys still were, they were young when she died, man. That was... It's all screwed up. But anyway, it was really... You mentioned Elton and Bernie getting back together. I thought that was so telling of how, you said, how important she was to the global community, that they're like, you know what, we are what we are. This is more important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. And that's one of the few CDs I do have to this day, somewhere in this house.
So, coming in at number 6. Now, this one's interesting because the song and the single for number 6 was originally designed, again, for AIDS research.
Okay.
However, once the primary portion of the song was done, America's soil was attacked September 11th.
Oh, man.
And the last part of the song, the last verse, by a man who gets shit on so horribly by the public, came through with a verse directed towards 9/11.
Yep.
And so part of the funds then went to the American Red Cross for 9/11 as well. And we're talking about the All-Star Tribute, What's Going On.
Yep.
Now, just to put this in perspective, okay, you want to talk about putting petty bullshit beside you?
Right.
NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys.
Uh-huh.
Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera.
Yeah.
Then, on top of all that, you've got Ja Rule, Nelly, Destiny's Child, Gwen Stefani, Nona Gay, Marvin Gaye's daughter on here. You've got Fred Durst, who delivers the verse that I mentioned.
Yes.
Again, people crap on Fred a lot, and some of it may be justified.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and try and have that argument in that debate. Some of it might be justifiable because Fred Durst is definitely a character in his own right.
Yes. Yes.
But you go and you listen to the song, his is the only verse that is 9/11 attributed.
Yeah. Yep. It is.
Somebody tell me what's going on. We got human beings using humans for a bomb.
Yeah. To this day, Jay, and again, we are 12 years, 13, no, excuse me, made you older than you were, 7 years apart.
Yeah.
Pardon my further aging of your spine and your hair there. My bad, Doc.
Trying to turn me into Father Time here from freaking Santa Claus and waiting for the big old beard to start growing out of me.
I still say Father Time is in the first one too. It's all big conspiracy.
He is.
It's all big conspiracy. It's all it is. If you know, you know. If you don't, go back and watch that shit. I don't think there'll be any more prevalent global news story in our lifetimes than that. I really don't. It has changed. Maybe the pandemic.
Maybe.
But 9/11 changed everything we did in our lives in different ways.
Yeah.
The way we travel, the way we conduct ourselves with
people.
The way we look at people, good or bad.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's definitely not positive, but you cannot look me in the eyes and tell me for a good, we'll say 5 years, that if you saw anybody of Arab descent, you didn't immediately think terrorist.
Yeah. It's definitely more.
And if you try to tell me that, I call you a liar.
Yeah. It's one of those, never were our basic inner raw nerves exposed any more than that.
Oh.
I can't even. And what's really frightening for me when I think back on it now is how those events tie directly into my initial traumatic brain injury, and just the fact that, I didn't know what my world was going to be at that point. And 2 weeks into my new existence, the entire world's existence completely changed.
Yeah.
The entire world changed. Beginning, end, middle period, whatever you want to call it. It was completely changed in that however many minutes of time in New York and Philadelphia and back east. It was just that impactful on a global scale. Not just in this country, not just in our allies and our enemies, but everybody. And those names coming together, I mean, you cannot tell me that those names all coming together on that, not only to, again, raise awareness for the fight against AIDS, but now it's like, hey, AIDS is a major, and will continue to be a major deal until they find the ultimate resolution to that being a problem for those that are afflicted and affected by it. But now we've been attacked.
Yeah. And like I like I said, the entire track was pretty much done. Jermaine Dupri produced, arranged, got everybody together in ways that only Jermaine Dupri could.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, like I said, he brought Backstreet and NSYNC together
Right.
during a time when they supposedly had heat.
Yes.
He brought Britney and Christina together during a time when they supposedly had heat.
Yes.
The only thing that could have made this more monumental, considering the fact that both Biggie and Pac were dead at this point, is if he could have got 50 Cent on the track alongside Ja Rule.
Yeah, that would have been major.
That's the only thing that would have made this even bigger than it already was.
Yeah.
You've got Jermaine Dupri and you've got Puffy on the track.
Yep.
So you've arguably got the two biggest hip hop producers, not named Dr. Dre, collaborating on this track in some form.
Yeah. There's so much potential strife in that proverbial room.
Yeah.
And it didn't play out like that at all.
No, because it was all about bigger than the individual.
Yep. And
that's the common thread going back to that Eagles CD that we gave more than enough plugs to back in August.
Yes.
That's the common thread throughout a lot of these, is putting the petty bullshit aside for the greater good.
Yep. Yeah.
You know?
Much smaller scale, but the fact that the boys themselves put aside their petty bullshit to back up Travis and went, we still sound pretty good. Boom! Second half of their career. This particular, like I said, this particular track hits home. I was aware of this one. I was aware of this one when it came out. As unaware of my surroundings as I was at that point, even then, it hit hard. So it hit home so hard, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And it that was what it was supposed to do.
Yeah. And if you have not heard it, I highly recommend you look it up.
Yeah.
The YouTube video, Spotify, wherever you can track it down. If you can find the making of video, watch that too, because that's definitely got a laugh or two in it during this tragic time that everything's coming together.
Yes.
I will never forget Fred Durst walking into that room and Jermaine basically telling him in not so many words, I don't want to hear your whiny rap voice. You're going to say this shit, put some fucking bass in your voice.
Right. It was like,
because if you think about how nasally some of Fred's raps are,
yes,
Jermaine's basically telling him, he's like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear some of that. Give me something to break. Like, I want that anger, that frustration in your voice.
That's right. I want early Fred, damn you.
But like I said, it's the equivalent of use your big boy voice.
Right.
I don't want to hear the little nasally, whiny kid that's trying to rap alongside Method Man.
Yes.
Put some bass in your voice.
Yeah, and
Menace
or not.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I cracked up. I will forever remember that clip to this day. To the day I die, I'll remember that shit. I'll be talking about that on my deathbed.
Yeah.
But go back and watch it because the video is so poignant. Watching everybody come together, like I said, I mean, it's all about putting the pettiness behind and keeping with the theme of putting pettiness behind them. This entry comes from your workplace.
Uh-oh.
This one, the fund was the Disney Worldwide Conservation Fund.
Oh,
but
wow. Okay.
But you want to talk about putting pettiness aside.
Jeez.
You've got Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato, and Selena Gomez alongside the Jonas Brothers.
That's some recent petty shit.
Now, if memory serves me correctly, Miley had dated one, and Selena was currently dating the one that Miley dated at the time this song was being made.
Yeah.
Selena and Demi were good friends.
Yep.
And Miley didn't like Selena. Then you got the Jonas Brothers basically all just kind of there.
Yeah, it was.
So you want to talk about a recipe for a messy situation?
Yep.
That really could have been one.
Yeah.
But even for as young as all of them were, they put the pettiness aside for the greater cause.
And I remember when this came out and you and I talking about, oh boy. And
you should remember this for the longest time.
yeah.
I would post a quote from this song on my Facebook
Oh, yeah.
every day.
Every day.
Anytime I put up a status, I would put, remember, a word is just a word until you mean what you say.
Yep.
And love is just love until you give it away.
Yep.
It's like, because that shit still hits me hard in the feels.
Yep.
It's like you sit there and you think about it. It's like a word is just a word until you mean what you say. So if you just talk into talk, your words don't amount to shit.
Nope.
And love isn't love until you fully give yourself to somebody else.
Yep. It's amazing what the power of words, either direction, will do.
People joke and say sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Well, there are words that do hurt.
Yep.
There are insults and things that people say to you that do hurt.
Especially when you mean it.
You know, go into one of my other favorite artists. You know, when somebody's mean, where do you hide?
Yeah. Nope.
You know, it's like it seems silly to let words like that control you. But
we're human.
It goes back to the you never know what someone's going through.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we allude to it and reference it not all the time, but somewhat frequently. All it takes is that one bad day.
Yep.
If someone's already going through a rough spot in their life, and then you come along with some snarky insult,
yeah,
that just pushes them over that deep end.
Yep.
How would you feel if that person then goes off and kills somebody or themselves based off of the words that you said to them? Yeah. Would you be able to live with yourself? I don't think I would.
That's why I've always discouraged and preached to the kids. It's like snark and humor have their place, but read the room.
Yeah.
Read the room. And that's why we were, and again, I'm going inside baseball here probably more than I should, so forgive me in advance there, folks. But that's why we were not preached, but encouraged at training. It's like our role, whatever role we're in on property, is to create happiness. That's what the Walt Disney Company does. What Disneyland, the parks, resorts, and experiences do. We create happiness. The guests are supposed to come in and escape from whatever's going on out there. And we don't assume anything about anybody that walks through those gates, anybody that walks in from backstage through those gates that happen to be on the clock. We're all having the day we're having. Guess what? We're on stage. Our guests are on stage with us. We are where we are for the reason we are, and that's to enjoy the fact that we're part of the magic for the moment. Yeah. And albums like this are representative of, people are going to be people. Human beings are human beings. But there's a bigger thing. There's a bigger message. There's a bigger cause to unite against.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can't make a distinction between what is necessary and what we want, then we're not doing our jobs right as human beings.
No. At the end of the day, to put a little bow on this entry, we're going to tie it back to one of the early entries in the Disney Animation Archives. What does Thumper say?
You can't say something nice. Don't say nothing at all. And that was way too close to his voice. We need to move on to the next one before I scare myself even damn further.
Number 4 on the list is the other Gulf War entry that I have on my list.
Okay, now Jeff Christ. Okay, go ahead.
The Peace Choir with their rendition of John Lennon's Give Peace a Chance. Now, you want to talk about an all-star cast here. Okay. orchestrated by Yoko Ono, who thankfully does not appear on the song.
Oh, damn.
I love her for who she was, but I'm trying to put a little bit of light here.
No, I know, guy. Yeah,
Okay.
her singing voice is what it is.
But her and John's son, Sean,
Yes.
and Lenny Kravitz
Nice.
originally collaborated and brought together Sebastian Bach from Skid Row, Peter Gabriel, Cyndi Lauper in her first of 2 entries on this countdown,
Yes.
LL Cool J, MC Hammer, Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, Tom Petty, and so many more. I mean, if you can see some of the names on the cover there, you've got John Frusciante and Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. You've got Alana Miles. You've got Iggy Pop and Run DMC and Bonnie Raitt.
Yeah. Yep.
Like this was more star-studded to me than Voices That Care. And
Yes.
then, of course, being the tie to John Lennon, the Beatles, obviously going to resonate a little bit more with me than Voices That Care did.
Yes. Sorry.
But I mean, like, this was just, again, playing to that MTV generation. Like, you listen to the names that I rattled off there. And is there really a weak link in any of those?
I don't see it if there is. I really don't.
I mean, granted, we'll make a little bit more fun of this when we actually get to it, but there's no Dan Aykroyd in this one. Okay, just throwing that out there.
Damn it! I know we're trying to make it light, but you're wrong for that.
Am I really?
You're out of line. How about that? But you're not wrong.
Okay.
How about that? Okay.
Again, though, like I said, trying to bring a little bit of ha-ha to the subject, but the Gulf War, like we touched on earlier, was not pretty.
No.
At the end of the day, it was a war that was unnecessary.
Yep.
Like most wars are, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and our dad's generation was Vietnam.
Yeah.
Ours was the Gulf War.
Yeah.
We did not need to be over there up in that bullshit.
No.
We didn't. But humanitarian-wise, yeah, we kind of did. So,
and
again, debatable.
For all these guys to come together, and gals.
Yep.
11 years after the passing of John Lennon.
Yeah. Yep.
22, I want to say, after the original release of Give Peace a Chance, because I want to say Give Peace a Chance originally came out in 1969 while John was still a Beatle, because it actually was credited to Lennon and McCartney, even though Paul had nothing to do with it.
Right.
There's been moves made in recent years to try to get it credited to Lennon and Ono instead of Lennon and McCartney, because it was a solo song, because Paul did have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of the thing back then, during that era.
Yep.
John wrote a song, it was credited Lennon McCartney. Paul wrote a song, it was credited Lennon McCartney.
Because they were the team.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Like I said, I think I remember far too much of that time because of how integrated it became with the WWF storylines and how much more I wanted to know about what was going on.
See, and I wasn't watching back then. Obviously, my entry into the WWE is more than documented on both our channels.
Right.
I don't know how I would have felt.
Yeah.
Watching that back then. I mean, when you figure how wrapped up I got into storylines early on, believing that it was real.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have handled Sergeant Slaughter, the guy that used to run with G.I. Joe.
Right?
The real American hero.
Yeah.
Being an Iraqi sympathizer. And that's how he gets the WWF title?
Yeah. And
I don't know, dude. Like,
when you think about, you would have been roughly 15 years old when he became champion, or in that year. Mm-hmm. So 14 to 15. The fact that they purposely, back before I think the word even existed, photoshopped a photo of Sergeant Slaughter and General Adnan with Saddam Hussein like they was buddies from way back. The fact that there's a legitimate picture of, I forget Adnan's real name, so forgive me, he was actually acquainted with Hussein when they were younger. There was so much wrapped up into that. And because that was going on my television screens every Saturday morning and on pay-per-view, I wanted to know what this really was about. And man, you look back on some of the atrocities that were committed, excuse me, there's my good English kicking in there. That was committed and shit. Good grief, Jeff. The fact that much like we talked about Diana's death earlier, the entire world was wrapped up in this.
Absolutely.
Good or bad. It was just,
How could you not be?
Yeah, I mean, at its core, this was a perception presentation-wise, an evil, maniacal, ruthless person subjugating his law and will over a little bitty, sub part of his country, and the good guys draped out in red, white, and blue coming to save the day. It's like, man, that hits hard whether you're watching a primetime, television show or you're watching the news. That hits you right in the ugh. So that's why the charity albums that were generated for the Gulf War relief, they can't be underscored enough because of the relevancy in both our lifetimes. I'm sure a lot of the viewers at home too.
Yeah. Moving from one Beatle-related song to another.
Yes.
At number 3 is the song that is arguably the original charity single. George Harrison's Bangladesh for the Bangladesh refugees.
Yes.
Now, at the end of the day, if you listen to how this song starts, it's pretty much how the song was conceived.
Yes.
Ravi Shankar, his good buddy, the man who taught him the sitar, approached him about the shit that was going on in his homeland.
Yep.
And George, being the ex-Beatle, decided to do something about it. Use his name for good.
Exactly.
So much so that there was the concert for Bangladesh, which did amazing numbers for the time. Multi-vinyl set.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Clapton, Bob Dylan, Billy Preston, Ringo, you name it, for the time. Like, it was an all-star concert. Ravi Shankar playing sitar for a little bit. But it's the only one on the countdown that was released prior to my coming into existence. Because I want to say the song came out in 72, 73.
Yep.
So it's a good 3 to 4 years before I was even conceived, let alone birthed into this world. Right. But for it being the original, it had to be high up on the list for me. It's not my favorite. It's not even my favorite George song. Right. I do throw it on my compilations of his music because it was a hit for him.
Yeah.
But I think you'll understand when you see what 2 and 1 are, why this one only fell at number 3.
So you said 73?
72, 73, yeah.
Forgive my complete ignorance here. Everybody out there, including the hardcore Beatles fans, when did they break up officially?
70.
Okay. So you figure this is less than 2 or 3 years after the big, done. And Ringo and George are on this together.
George and Ringo were always
right
close, the same way that John and Paul were close.
Right.
You never really hear any stories about there being strife between George and Ringo.
Right. Which I remember that, having had that thought in my head, but it's like public perception is everything. And the fact that less than 3 years, figure if we're going broad spectrum there, less than 3 years after they completely fell apart as a foursome, again, the greater good, the bigger cause. Petty bullshit, no. Mm-hmm. We need to make this right.
At the breakup, the biggest heat was with Paul for the most part.
Right.
It's like if you even look at credits on John, George, and Ringo's early albums, there's a lot of cross-pollinations between all three of them.
Right.
Where all three of them will be on a song on John's album.
Yeah.
They're just missing Paul for it to be an official Beatles song.
Right, because Paul, if you go with the belief, was, you know, the...
And even Ringo and Paul never really had that much strife.
No.
You'll see Ringo pop up on some of Paul's, before Wings formed.
Right, of course.
You'd see Ringo pop up on some of Paul's albums. Ringo would pop up on George albums. You know, if memory serves me correctly, being the Beatles fan that I am, and Dad, if you watch this, you can definitely fact check me.
Yes, please, Jerry. Yes.
I don't think Paul got back involved really with George and Ringo as a trio until all those years ago.
Right.
Which came out and was George's tribute song about John.
Right. Right. And again, putting bullshit aside for the greater good, man. John.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, that was their brother. I mean,
right.
Paul had done a couple of songs on his album that were just Paul.
Yeah.
For John. You know, the most iconic being Here Today, which he still does in concert. But all those years ago, man, that was George just spilling his guts about John. You know, I always looked up to you. You were the one who everyone thought was weird. You were the one with the truth who said all that you need is love. You know. But bringing it back to Bangladesh, like I said, this is the first one really for all these others that came after it. And even the more popular ones that we're going to get into at number 2 and 1. And honestly, number 2 and 1, just depend on what side of the bed you wake up in the morning, could easily be interchangeable. You know,
people, again, the world's cynical, more so now than ever. You know, charity singles are what they are, and I feel like people just look at it as, oh, it's just another way to, you know, just get attention or whatever. They're not making the money, but they're getting the awareness. It's like, you know, they're getting the awareness out about the cause, not about their own crap. And for at least the ones on this list.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's a certain degree of truth to that where, you know, if you get involved into a charity single, then it's going to bring eyes to your music as a whole too. You know, if someone, you take something like the What's Going On song, you know, and you look at all the different genres that blended together there between the boy bands, the princess pop with Britney and Christina, you got the R&B of Mary J. Blige and Destiny's Child, you've got the rock of Perry Farrell, Fred Durst, you've got Aaron Lewis from Stained, you've got the rap of Ja Rule and Nelly and Little Kim. You know, you figure all those genres that blend together for that song. And if you're a rap fan, and then here comes, you know, Aaron Lewis from Stained with his soulful voice, and you're like, man, white boy can sing. I like him. Who's this again? Oh, Aaron Lewis. Okay, let me look up some of his stuff.
Exactly, right?
You know, so there's a little bit of truth to that statement where I'm sure there's a lot of artists that do these type of things in order to not just bring awareness to the cause, but awareness to their own careers. And it's smart business.
It is.
You know, if you look at it as a business and as an intellectual property and as a character standpoint, like we do with movies and wrestling.
Yes.
What better way to bring eyes to your product?
Yep.
You know, no different than putting the title on Logan Paul at Country Redacted.
Oh my God, I hope that didn't happen. Oh my God,
what better way to bring eyes to the product?
Right.
We're pre-taping this, so we don't know if that happened
or
not. But
right.
Heaven forbid I'm freaking Nostradamus over here.
Do not freaking manifest this shit, Jay.
David Arquette, WCW champion. Just
Do not let
saying.
the Roman Empire fall and Country Redacted and Logan Paul, for the love of God.
Right?
I will say this, though. Shows like this always make me think of the episode of Friends where Phoebe hates PBS.
Okay.
And she says that line, or Joey says it, there is no unselfish good deed. Because even if you do a good deed for somebody else, you still feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's still giving you that selfish bit of, ooh, I did something good today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what kind of generated that thread at top. I was like, you know what? She's not wrong.
That's fair.
So anyway.
Moving on. Like
2
I
and 1.
said,
Yes.
I said, number 2, number 1, we honestly could sit here and argue over which one should be which.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, it just depends what side of the bed you wake up on each day.
Yes.
The only reason I put number 2 as number 2 is because it's seasonal.
Yes. Yes.
And of course, that's Band-Aids. Do they know it's Christmas?
Oh, my
And
goodness.
I mean, again, this was for Ethiopia famine. You figure you've got Bono, you've got Phil Collins, Boy George, Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran, George Michael still with Wham, Steen fresh out of the Police, Jody Watley, Paul Young, just to name a few.
Yes.
Like, again, you want to talk about an all-star cast here. Like, seriously, and arguably, as much as Bangladesh was the original charity single, this was the original all-star charity single.
Agreed.
So there you've got that going for it. And it's like, well, if it's the original all-star single, why isn't it number 1? Because like I said, it's seasonal.
Exactly.
Every single song on this list you can play all year long if you want to, except this one.
Yes.
People look at you funny if you try playing Christmas in July, dancing around your bedroom in a tank top and shorts.
Now,
Trust me, I know from experience.
Maybe not July, maybe June or August. Christmas in July is perfectly acceptable now. So. I will say this, though. At least we're doing this show today in November because you mentioned George Michael and Wham and Christmas in the same setting. We wouldn't survive Whamageddon if you did that after December 1st. You got to be careful with that shit. You
Be
careful.
What? People can say what they want about Last Christmas, but let me ask you this on a serious tip.
Okay.
What would you rather hear on repeat, Last Christmas or All I Want for Christmas Is You? Those are the only 2 songs that'll play all Christmas, and you can only hear one of those 2. There is nothing else in the Christmas catalog that will ever play from December 1st and through till December 26th. One song.
Damn it.
That's what I thought. Because if we're talking music videos, I'll take All I Want for Christmas Is You all day, every day.
Yes.
Then at least I can look at Mariah Carey.
Right.
If we're
That's it.
just talking about the song, I'm taking Last Christmas.
This is why I listen to alternate versions of both those songs.
Agreed.
Every year.
Agreed. But,
I will not go to Whamhalla ever again.
I don't get as annoyed by those 2 songs as other people do. I know you don't either because you're a Christmas connoisseur, just like I am.
I only get annoyed with both of them. Much more so Mariah's song because of the overabundance on even satellite stations. Like, Jesus, right? But yeah, it just became a thing being buddies with our buddy Christian. It's just kind of one of those, go for it. I'm
gonna make a hot take here.
Here we go.
And you're probably gonna hate me for this, but I'm gonna make a hot take here. And I want the public out here that's listening to this to seriously sit and think about it before they rebuttal me. Okay? Because you've got to keep time and generations in perspective here. Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You is our generation's White Christmas. You think about the popularity of the singer. You think about how long the song has endured. You think about the fact that All I Want for Christmas Is You is the number one Christmas song ever, according to Billboard. We discussed that last year.
Yes.
All I Want for Christmas Is You is our generation's White Christmas. Think about it before you rebuttal against me.
Our generation? Yes. Particular households is definitely a subjective, debatable topic. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying it's as good as, I'm not saying it's better than. It is our generation's White Christmas.
I only say what I said the argument-wise because even when it was still new, it got very little play in our house or in our cars, for grace of God.
I can understand that. Again, if you want to throw the ticker back up, there's subjective, different strokes, different folks.
Yes.
And again,
either way. Right.
I'm not saying it's better than, greater than, any of that. As good as. You look at the time, you look at the generations, you look at the longevity, you look at the staying power, you look at how many people cover it. It is our generation's White Christmas.
It wouldn't be so lampooned and so shit on if it wasn't played as much as it was and heard by so many people on generation as it was. So that's the argument right there. That's the statement. That's the tweet, if you will.
And now we come to the number one spot. And if Band-Aid is number two, there can only be number one.
Yes.
USA for Africa's We Are the World. Obviously, African Family Relief.
Yes.
Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, Paul Simon, Stevie Wonder making another appearance, Kenny Rogers, Tina Turner, Steve Perry, Huey Lewis, who would go on and tell us about the power of love.
That's right.
Cyndi Lauper making another appearance, Bob Dylan, Ray Charles, and yes, first name listed on the single there, Dan Aykroyd.
That's right.
Because why not? Why not have Dan Aykroyd in this freaking song? I mean, I guess if we can have freaking LaToya Jackson on this, I guess we can have Dan Aykroyd too.
Man, poor LaToya. She gets so much shit.
I'm sorry. She is the most useless member of that family.
Oh my God. We're not being charitable to her on the charity show whatsoever. Anyway,
no disrespect, seriously intended. Don't take my ha-ha for seriousness. But I'm just saying, like, when you put her up against freaking Michael and Janet and Jermaine and Tito and even Marlon and Randy, ... LaToya.
She got Paul Roman.
She did.
You got straight Paul Roman right now in front of the world.
Did. But you know what Paul Roma has that LaToya Jackson doesn't have?
What's that?
Paul Roma was a horseman.
That's right. So was Jeff Jarrett, apparently. I said so myself on Twitter. Woo!
But anyway,
straight there on the express lane.
We Are the World, USA for Africa. I mean, again, look at the names that I didn't rattle off. Harry Belafonte, Kim Carnes, Sheila E., Holland Oates, Waylon Jennings, Billy Joel, Kenny Loggins. It's like the Pointer Sisters, Smokey Robinson, The Boss, Bruce Springsteen, like...
Bette Midler's on there, Lindsey Buckingham's on there, and look at the credits underneath at the bottom. The writing and producing. Look at that shit again. Michael and Lionel, produced and conducted by Quincy Jones. That trio right there, just take all my money. All of it.
And that's why it's number one, and Do They Know It's Christmas is number two, because We Are the World, Michael, Lionel, and Quincy basically took the concept that Band-Aid did, said, hold my beer.
Yeah. Yep.
We're going to do it better.
Yep.
And they did. And there's a lot of people that cannot stand We Are the World to this day. But it's lightning in a bottle.
It really is.
Time capsule. It's a moment in time. again, you get all of those egos in the same room and nobody is displaying an ego for the greater good.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then you think about people that got left out. And this is part of why I give Dan Aykroyd and LaToya Jackson so much shit over this song, okay?
Okay.
John Denver wanted to be part of this, but they thought he was that corny country guy.
Oh, man. Oh, no.
But Dan Aykroyd and LaToya Jackson are part of this.
Hey, Dan Aykroyd was a legitimate rock star and a hell of a singer.
You know what? The Blues Brothers were a tremendous skit during the Not Ready for Primetime Players years on SNL. So good that it got its own movie in which the great and powerful Oz, Frank Oz, has a cameo.
That's right.
But let's be serious for a minute.
100% serious.
Total
John Denver.
Lance Storm here. Can I be serious for a minute?
That's right. That's right.
John Denver's too hokey, but Dan Aykroyd is there. The same guy that was just in Ghostbusters.
I know.
And you're telling me that he's not hokey, cheesy for this. That Dan Aykroyd is going to bring some serious name recognition to this. You'd convince me a little easier. Retro booking being what it is, let's not jump all over me for saying this man's name. You'd convince me a little easier if it was Bill Cosby. Hot on the heels of the Cosby Show at the time.
That's fair. That's fair.
You want an actor that's going to bring some name recognition? Dan Aykroyd?
Well, yes, it was fresh after Ghostbusters,
Eddie
but
Murphy.
Okay. Yeah.
Still on SNL, I think, or just coming off of SNL.
I think still on. Either way. There's definitely names that, hindsight being what it is, definitely belong there, and names that don't. But
I digress.
It's still it's still a great track. It's still a wonderful, noble cause.
Oh yeah.
And it brought you talk about star power, you talk about all-star power. That's freaking Roman Reigns on another level star power. There's a shit ton of talent in that room.
Which is again why it takes number one spot in my opinion. I mean,
yeah.
When the only thing that you can really say negative about it is Dan Aykroyd and LaToya Jackson, then you're stretching to find something to nitpick.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is what it is, and it's still a time capsule. It's still a moment in time. And I did say at the outset that there was a lot of sadness, a lot of negativity, a lot of depressing things to come with this. So I've tried to give a little bit of ha-ha as much as I can here over some of these to try to lighten the mood some.
Yes.
So that it's not complete depressing and overstimulated negativity. Again, all these causes are what they are, whether it's AIDS, whether it's 9/11, American Red Cross, whether it's starving kids in Ethiopia or Bangladesh refugees, it's or Princess Diana. All of these things were spawned out of some form of tragedy. None of these came together for some positive, thing.
Originally, right, yeah.
It just ended up being a positive moment that everyone was able to come together.
Yeah.
But it almost always takes some kind of tragedy to breed this positivity.
Yes.
So that is the list that I have put together for us today. You notice what's going on was the only 9/11. That's because a lot of the other 9/11 songs weren't official charity singles.
No.
Songs like Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning by Alan Jackson. I could have sworn Paul McCartney's Freedom was a charity single, but I found nothing on the write-up about it.
No.
Being a charity single. Because I know he wrote it and performed it for the very first time at that 9/11 concert that was televised.
Yes, he did.
So I could have sworn that it was a charity single, but I couldn't find anything on the write-up for it.
No.
So that's why that wasn't on here. You know, you think about some of the stuff and some of the times people have come together, and there's other songs that definitely were in contemplation. I mean, you saw the graphic that Jeff used to promote it, and all the I made sure to throw a bunch of images to him that weren't on the list just to try to help fill things out some.
Exactly. Which I appreciate very
Personal
much.
personal feelings aside, any song that was done as a charity single for the hopes of getting that, notoriety out there, that recognition,
Yep.
the cause in the forefront where people would be talking about it. Some cases damn near 40 years, 50 years later,
Yeah. Yep.
all are honorable mentions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Even the ones that I don't know that well, that I don't really listen to, people I don't like, covers and remakes. There have been a bunch of versions of Do They Know It's Christmas in recent years. There was like a 20th anniversary, 30th anniversary. Every one of them gets a mention from us.
Absolutely. We mentioned it toward the end there, that positivity was bred out of these negative, tragic moments around the world. Our topics next month are very much born out of positive thinking and we're hoping to spread even more positivity with the four straight Mondays. Every Monday in December, we will be on with the dads, now always on wrestling, and in 3 of those cases, weeks-wise, special guests.
Yes.
Because we're starting off with a topic that is both near and dear to our hearts, maybe a little more me because of what I do when I can do it. Because the first Monday in December, JJ and I are going to be talking about the top 10 portrayals of the man with the bag, Santa Claus himself in a cinematic form. And Lord knows, with what they're doing on Disney Plus right now, that man's being talked about.
Now let me ask something just for clarification. You said
Yes, sir.
cinematic form, so we're only dealing with movie portrayals, or are we
No,
doing televised portrayals in general?
we can do TV as well because there's a couple of my lists that are definitely televised, either animated or live action. So
Okay. Just wanted
definitely,
to make sure.
yeah. So cinematic and so non-audio, but animated, live action, but definitely TV film. That bag, if you will, the other bag besides the one that he has every Christmas Eve. But then the following 3 weeks, good Lord Almighty, help us all.
Yeah. If you think that Jeff chills and kisses booty for the mouse that is depicted on his chest and behind him enough,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
one, not two, but 3 weeks of Disney. As
Yes,
me and Jeff are gonna dive deep into the greatest Disney songs of
nah.
all time. I was gonna say we've broken this down into 3 different subgenres, sub
Yes,
time frames, if you will.
yes.
We basically got part 1 is gonna be the Walt era. So from 1928 and the first sound Mickey cartoon all the way up until 1970. Granted, Walt passed away in 66, but you figure there was a lot that was already in motion.
In the can, if you will. Yes.
Not necessarily in the can, but in motion as he was passing away. I know that Jungle Book is something that he was kind of heavily involved in. That came out in 67.
Yes.
So 28 to 70, we've dubbed that essentially the Walt era.
Yes.
Then we're going to do from 1971 to the year 2000.
The year 2000.
It's basically the Dark Ages and the Renaissance. The
Our childhood.
rise and fall, if you will, of the Disney audio era.
Yes.
The
Yes.
the decline and the resurgence.
Yes, exactly.
And then 2001 to the present day.
Yes. Now, the main caveat that has bit me square in the Disney love and bunghole is that I can't use attraction music from the Disney parks or background music. Those are off the table. Everything else.
It's off the table in certain aspects. I mean, for example, just for clarification here, Feed the Birds. You can use the version from Mary Poppins.
Right.
You can't use the piano instrumental that's played in Club 33.
Right.
Since that is a song that appears in a movie, it can be used. You know, it's basically, it was my way of saying we can't do songs like It's a Small World.
Right.
The Tiki Room.
Yes.
You know, those are theme park songs.
Right. Right.
Those were written exclusively for theme parks.
Yes.
You know, you can't say, oh, well, you can't use Kiss the Girl because it's in the Little Mermaid ride when it existed in the movie freaking 20 years before there was a ride.
So the songs and tracks that were written with the explicit initial idea of having them be on the soundtrack of the movie are open.
Yeah.
But Pirate's Life for Me is in Peter. Well, hang on. Yo-Ho, Pirate's Life for Me, the original context, it was in the Peter Pan movie, but the greater full-length song in the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, no.
See, those are different songs. There's
That's
A
true.
Pirate's Life is a Wonderful Life. That's one song. Then there's Yo-Ho, Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me.
That's fair.
Two different songs. Completely different.
Good point. And see, that's why I'm still learning even now working for the mouse.
But basically, it's open to any song from an animated Disney movie or short. So things like Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? Allowed.
I can't turn the chair far enough, but yeah. Anything from that.
Anything from the live action Disney movies. Like I said, Feed the Birds, good example. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. What's another good one that I can use?
Cane on the Water.
There you go. Anything like that. Yep. Anything from their television shows. Whether it's the Best of Both Worlds theme song for Hannah Montana or the theme song to Darkwing Duck.
Yes.
Or some random song from an episode of Elena of Avalor or something.
Yeah. There
All
are
of that is open.
Yeah, there are options where I shouldn't be bitching. I just like my park music, damn it. So
Disney Channel original movies, High School Musical, Descendants, Camp Rock, all open.
Disney Channel original series back when they were still a thing. You remember, boys and girls? I do.
Basically, the only thing that I've put on is attraction songs.
Yes.
Songs that were written specifically for the ride. So no Grim Grinning Ghosts, no Yo-Ho Pirate's Life for Me, no It's a Small World, no Tiki Room, no Bear Band Serenade from the Country Bears. You know, I did it to myself too.
You did it to yourself. That's right.
So you know, it's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Yes, very much Carousel Progress. Yep, exactly. So okay, so let me kind of real quick here. The content has to be the movie, the television show, the television special, whatever you want to call it, the audio, whatever, has to be originally by Disney. Example I'm trying to make is episodes 1 through 6, no. Episodes 7, 8, 9, yes.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, again, that sounds like you're going to use Star Wars as soundtrack. You know what? That's some good shit music on them soundtracks. So don't even fault me for saying that, folks. But
you can't use the opening crawl theme, the main Star Wars theme,
because that's
written in 77.
Exactly.
Even though it appears in 7, 8, 9.
That's why I want to make the distinction, because if it wasn't originally conceived within the umbrella of the mouse,
correct.
No. So, okay. So the Simpsons theme, no.
But if you want to use the Jack Sparrow theme, you can,
which I love.
If you want to use instrumental, none of my stuff is instrumental that I can recall. Right. It's all something lyrical, but yeah.
Yes, but we digress. That's coming up, starting in 2 weeks with our Santa episode. Which again, I don't think there's any more important time of year for either of us than what is coming up in a couple of weeks. I mean, starting this coming week because Thanksgiving is this week.
And I start the Santa Clauses.
I know, dude. Last week was hard because I could not focus between Santa Claus and Mickey the Mouse. Goodness gracious.
Jeff was on Disney overload.
Yeah, between being there and TV and work were just slack-jawed, coma. Anyway, thank you guys again for allowing us to invade your space for an hour and a half here on a Monday. JJ, again, great content topic. I love that we got to talk about this. I didn't think we'd go more than an hour. I'm not going to lie because of the topic and my lack of knowledge. So it's good that we got some good meat to sink into. And again, we're not trying to be, push stuff or be, preachers or whatever. But man,
nor are we trying to be Debbie Downers.
No, we're not. It's just these causes are so important, and the music that was born out of them is so
good
quality, and so it needs to reach your broader audience. So if you weren't aware of any of these tracks, like I wasn't of a couple, like even Jay wasn't aware they were cherry on a couple of them, make it a point. Find them on YouTube. If you can find them for sale and they're still generating the funds they were designed for, go buy that shit. Like seriously. Music brings us together. You hear that all over the world. You hear that in context all over the place, but it is a legitimate fact. So definitely can't emphasize it enough how important it is to have any kind of music reach your ears. But this list in particular is vital important.
Agreed. Like he was saying, like I said, we're not trying to be Debbie Downers. Again, we realize that all of these tracks were born out of some kind of negativity, some kind of tragedy, but it's the positivity that they brought not just to the charities they were designed for, but the world en masse, because every one of these songs touched somebody somewhere, even as hokey as some of them are. And we're looking at you, Mick and David.
Or Dan Aykroyd being a part of number one.
Yeah. But I mean, I echo Jeff's sentiment. See if you can go on YouTube. See if you can find the music videos for some of these.
Yes.
And watch how some of these people interact with each other. And look at the joyous expressions on their faces. The fact that we may not be here out of the most positive of circumstances, but damn it, we're going to do everything we can to brighten someone's day.
And if you happen to watch Dancing in the Street with Mick and David for the first time, you better text us or email us and thank us. Because damn it, that shit's worth it.
It's the equivalent of watching the Star Wars Holiday Special. It really is.
Oh, okay. Whoa. I don't think it's that bad. Jesus.
But you have to put in context the time they had to work with.
I know.
That's the key.
That's the key. The Star Wars Holiday Special had time, and it still came out like that.
Indeed. And that's the other thing I want to really touch on real quick before Jeff sends us home. This is why I wanted to do this week. Again, we're a few days away from Thanksgiving. We're a month or so away from Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, whatever it is that you celebrate.
Yes.
What better time to talk about these songs that brought people together than around the time of year where we come together as family to break bread with one another.
Exactly.
Whether it's your family, your friends, whomever, your coworkers. That's why it was so important to do this Monday.
Even if it's coming together with somebody you would never think you'd find common ground with, that's why shows like this, that's why albums and songs like this are of importance.
Yep.
It really is that simple, folks. Again, on Psych Wrestling, not hard to conceive, just hard to execute in the proper way.
To steal a phrase from my open mic night cohort, it's as simple as that.
Exactly. And with that, we will send you on with the rest of your Monday night. Go watch Monday Night Raw because we're done in time, kids. No excuse to not watch that stuff. It's still good stuff out there. So, for the Renegade JJ Williams, I am West Coast Wrestler Jeff Meacham. We are the dads, not always on wrestling. And the next time you see us, It'll be Christmas time. We'll see you then.